Neil, we were hearing this afternoon Theresa May said that the two chief suspects in this case were actually officers working for Russia's military intelligence service. Let's just quickly remind ourselves of what she said, firstly.
Based on a body of intelligence, the government has concluded that the two individuals named by the police and CPS are officers from the Russian Military Intelligence Service, also known as the GRU. The GRU is a highly disciplined organisation with a well-established chain of command. So this was not a rogue operation. It was almost certainly also approved outside the GRU at a senior level of the Russian state.
As we heard there, Neil, almost certainly approved at a high level in the Russian state. What did you make of what she said?
Well, I would like to challenge Theresa May to make her statement outside of Parliament, to say the same thing she said in Parliament today outside, because she's protected by parliamentary privilege. In other words, she can say anything there and she can't be sued for defamation. If she really believes that, then why can't she come out and say that later on at a press conference, for example? Because all we had this morning was the police officer in charge of the criminal inquiry stating that they were looking for these two suspects, two Russian nationals, and the Crown Prosecution Service believed they had a strong enough case to prosecute them. Not that they were guilty, but to bring a criminal case against them. But Theresa May's gone way beyond that, Andrew. She's actually come out in Parliament today and basically accused Vladimir Putin of ordering this operation. And that's a very, very serious allegation to make. As I said, if she really believes that is true, then she should be able to make that outside of Parliament. If she doesn't, well, that tells us everything we need to know, doesn't it? That she's using parliamentary privilege to make that statement.
Do you think many people, I understand your point here, do you think many people, though, will take that point of view? Will it not be enough for people to hear the British Prime Minister say, our intelligence services say that it was the Russian intelligence services, therefore that's enough, the Russians did it?
Quite right. And then that's what Theresa May wants to happen. She wants people to believe that there's an open and shut case, that this was organised and planned by the Russian government. She's promoting a very anti-Russian agenda. She's gone way beyond what the police have said. And that's why I think it's irresponsible of her to have done that. And as I said, she should say this outside of Parliament. If she really believes it's true, say it outside, because all that's happening now is that this Cold War has got incredibly colder this morning because of this. And it's not the police. The police authorities, the press conference was very forensic. The police officer in charge of the investigation, as I said that there's these two suspects. Here are the photographs of them. We want these people for further questioning. Does anybody remember seeing them? Fair enough. And he said that the CPS has got a strong enough case to bring a prosecution against them. That's one thing. But what Theresa May's done is one thing altogether different. What she's actually gone is way beyond that. And she's made an allegation that this was the organisation, this was organised by the Russian government, in particular Vladimir Putin. So I think that this is a very serious state of affairs that we're now in because of what Theresa May said.
A thing that I found interesting is that the arguments she was putting forward are pretty much the same ones she was putting forward a few months ago. And these are arguments that many people have countered since. So, for example, Russia was the only country with the technical means. Well, we know that that isn't the case to distribute Novichok. She said that they were the only ones with the operational know-how. Well, I've heard plenty of times that being argued against. And thirdly, Russia was the only country with the motive. But when today she was asked, well, what would have been the motive? She said, well, it's not for me to describe the Russian motive.
Yes. Wasn't that interesting, wasn't it? When the MP asked her, actually, why would Russia want to do this, particularly at the time when the World Cup was just about to start a few months later, Russia was hosting the World Cup for the first time ever. Why would the Russian state organise and plan this operation in England just 3 months before the World Cup started? It doesn't make sense at all. But when she was asked that, Theresa May was deeply unconvincing. She couldn't give an answer, could she? All she said was, it's up to the Russians to tell us this. And so I think we're back to square one, really. We haven't had anything new added from Theresa May. If she's got this evidence, if the security services have got this evidence that the Russian state organised it and that these two men were working for the Russian state, then please produce it. Let's have it in the papers. Let's have it at a press conference. Let's produce it. It's not enough just to come up in Parliament and say, look, believe me, trust me, I've seen the intelligence. This was the Russian state. We were back there. It's all going back, Andrew, isn't it, to 2003 in Iraqi WMDs when Tony Blair stood up and said, look, believe me, we've seen the intelligence. Iraq's WMDs, end of story. But it wasn't. It was false information. And until we see this evidence that the Russian state was behind this and these two men are actually working for the Russian state, then we've got to be very sceptical, haven't we?
Yeah, is it curious that there wasn't that sort of level of scepticism in Parliament today? I didn't see her get grilled much over what she was saying.
I mean, yeah, it's very, very sad, isn't it? There's only probably a small group of MPs, 20 or 30, who have the courage to actually ask the right questions today. It's sort of everybody's singing from the same anti-Russian hymn sheet, aren't they? Coming out with these statements. What we're going to do about Russia, what are we going to do? And yet the police, as I said, the police haven't said that there's evidence to link the Russian state to this. All they are saying is that here are two guys who they believe came to Salisbury from Russia. They went to London in a hotel. And there's a lot of elements to the story, really, that we need more questioning on. For example, about the hotel. Do you remember that we were told these men stayed in a hotel in Bow in London, and that the police on the 5th of May, I think it was, or the 4th of May, actually found traces of Novichok in that hotel room? Well, Theresa May was asked about that, and again, she was very unconvincing. We were told that Novichok is the deadliest nerve agent known to man, and yet here was a hotel room where people were staying in from March to May. Cleaners would have cleaned the room, people would have gone in and out of that room, and nobody seems to have been affected. And then Theresa May said, oh, it was such a very, very small section of Novichok, a very, very, very small percentage or whatever, and so it wouldn't have an impact. But yet we were told that even the smallest march was deadly. So that doesn't add up, does it? And I think a very good question was asked by Daniel Sanford, I must say, from the BBC, when he asked about what kind of visas did these two suspects travel to Britain on. Were they tourist visas, business visas, diplomatic visas? And the police inspector couldn't answer that. He said, I don't know. I think that was quite remarkable. Why wouldn't they know? Because surely, in order to get the men's names or aliases, they would have liaised with the Home Office. And the Home Office surely would have been able to tell them, look, these guys came to Britain on a tourist visa, or they came on a business visa. And yet the policeman said he didn't know. So there's a number of issues in that police statement that really any MP worth the salt should be asking questions about now, instead of just blindly just going down this how can we strike back against Russia narrative.
So where will the case go from here? Because I've heard a couple of arguments. We know that these two Russian suspects won't be extradited in all probability. Some people have argued, well, they'll be tried in absentia, so we will get a trial of some sort. Others have said, well, actually, it's just going to be a trial by media. What are your thoughts here? Yeah. Will we get a firm conclusion, or will it all be just based on what we've heard over the last 3 hours?
No, I don't think we will do, because I think it's back to the Litvinenko case again, isn't it? When there was allegations, charges made against certain individuals, they were not extradited. The man in question wasn't extradited, and we're at the same position today. I think the problem is that Russia is damned if it does and damned if it doesn't. If there were going to be cause for Russia to extradite these two men, Russia is going to say, can we see your evidence? The British are going to say, no, you can't, but just extradite them. Well, of course, Russia can't extradite under those circumstances, can it? And of course, what kind of a fair trial would these two men get in Britain were they to be extradited, given the hysteria surrounding it and the anti-Russian hysteria? Could these men actually get a fair trial? So I think what's going to happen now, Andrew, to answer your question, is that the anti-Russian lobby in Britain are going to seize on this, the Prime Minister's statement today, and say we need to have tougher actions against Russia. There'll be the usual calls for RT to be taken off air, for more expulsions. But the question is, where is this all going to lead us? What do these anti-Russian lobby really want? What's the end result? Because I'm frightened that if we carry on down this path, we could be ending up in a military conflict with Russia. It seems to me there is such a rabid anti-Russian lobby in Britain that they really won't be satisfied until we get to that stage. So I think it's time to be calm. It's time for people to actually stay forensic and to challenge what's been put out today forensically, and to say, look, all we've had really is the police coming forward and saying, these two men, we need to speak to them. They are suspects. There is a case for them to be prosecuted. Not that they are definitely guilty, but there's certainly questions to answer. But again, there are questions to answer about what the police were saying too, as I just said, about the hotel, about why these men came to Britain, how they came to Britain on a tourist visa, what kind of visa was it. So I think that really the politics, unfortunately, is going to dictate what happens. And there is, as I said, a neoconservative anti-Russian lobby that will use any pretext to further punish Russia, and they will use this as furtherance of their agenda.
Theresa May sort of ended hoping that there'd be solidarity in Europe with a tougher stance against Russia. Do you think that will happen? There was some scepticism initially when the Skripal case broke among European leaders about what action should be taken, Russian involvement. Do you think there'll be similar scepticism this time, or perhaps more solidarity as Theresa May was hoping for?
What's happening, Andrew, is basically the United States and Britain are out to sabotage the Nord Stream gas pipeline project, because Germany has talked with Russia, of course, on constructing this. We need cheaper energy for Europe. But of course, America wants Europe to buy its liquefied natural gas. So in other words, we're seeing a geopolitical economic game being played here. And I no doubt Theresa May will, as we already heard from some of her pro-supporters, MPs, will actually be going to Europe and saying, look, you can't even talk about having Nord Stream 2. You can't even talk about gas pipelines with Russia. You've got to cancel that and support us in tougher sanctions, because the Russian state has tried to murder British citizens, tried to murder people with the UK passports in Salisbury in England, and it's absolutely beyond the pale now to have anything more to do with Russia economically in regards to gas pipelines. So I think that's going to be the next step.
OK, we'll have to wait and see, won't we, Neil? Neil, always good to talk to you. Appreciate your time this afternoon. That was UK-based journalist Neil Clark. Thanks,
Andrew.